Have you ever been in Walmart and wondered,
What aisle are the Happy Hearts in?
well, you're in luck because today we're going to talk about two very rich women's journey to answer this question. On the one hand, we have Madame Blueberry, a wealthy French born-again Christian blueberry. On the other, Krystal Ball, a wealthy American, probably atheist, human woman. Although of different nationalities, regions, and species, they do share one thing: a complicated relationship with stuff. Krystal, host of the podcast Breaking Points, which boasts over 1 million subscribers, claims that growing up in America,
our human worth was defined by what the market would pay us. Our value was measured by whether or not we were good little consumers.
well, across the pond, Madame Blueberry laments,
My neighbors have nice things, I've seen them myself. In fact, I keep pictures up here on my shelf. Look at this new flatware of Monsieur Lagoons, and Monsieur Duplan has 12 Franklin mint spoons. And Philip Vampy went and bought a new sink. Why, he even has a disposal, I think. And look at this quart pot of Madame Lacrosse's and ceramic jars where she keeps all her sauces. Nice sauces.
they're responding to the same paradigm of consumerism, one by rejecting it, one by giving in.
So, if I buy more things, that will make me happy?
At least at first. As the story goes, in order to quench her insatiable thirst for more stuff, Madame Blueberry decides to visit the Stuff Mart. But it doesn't ultimately make her happy. After tragedy strikes and she loses everything, something strange happens where she realizes that, all things considered, it was actually her focus on material things that had made her unhappy in the first place.
For so long I have had so much. A roof over my head, plenty of food, good friends. But all I wanted was more. No more. There's a new Madame Blueberry in town, and she's going to be thankful for what she has.
An attitude of gratitude, connection to other people, and her newfound faith in God is what makes life more meaningful. No more materialism, no more blues. Krystal handles the issue a bit differently. Being a different flavor of fruit, a leftist, the avenues which give Madame Blueberry happiness aren't as open to her. Karl Marx famously said, "Religious suffering is at one and the same time the expression of real suffering and a protest against real suffering. Religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of a heartless world, and the soul of soulless conditions. It is the opium of the people." He would see perhaps Madame Blueberry's transformation as a stopgap to assuage the ills brought on by unjust social conditions, which would presumably become superfluous and ultimately fade once poor social conditions are eliminated. Krystal claims to focus on the material facts, the things that really matter, because from her perspective, relationship-based aspects of life like culture, region, local community, family, and religion are ultimately far less important than class.
How do you assess, and it's really your vision that I'm after here, the so-called culture wars that we're having, whether it's around guns or abortion or all those kinds of issues? What relationship, if any, do you see between wars over culture and the old traditional class struggle between rich and poor, between employer and employee, and all of that?
Well, I am of the opinion that there is no war but class war.
Krystal can then comfortably dismiss Bob and Larry's friendship with Madame Blueberry because, after all, they have conflicting class interests. They might think they share some important aspects of personhood with their boss, maybe even agree with her about whatever political issues may come up around the park bench. They are all God-fearing evangelical Christian veggies, after all. But for Krystal, this portrayal of how relationships actually tend to form is a culture war fantasy. Krystal explains that, for us,
Our human worth was defined by what the market would pay us. Our value was measured by whether or not we were good little consumers.
And first of all, I'm sad for her if this is how she was made to feel her value was measured. For those of us who were raised on Madame Blueberry, we didn't suffer from feeling this way. And in this, she and Madame Blueberry might agree. Materialism doesn't make people happy, for sure. But for Krystal, the solution to this problem isn't a thankful heart, because happiness isn't a disposition of the heart. It isn't something in large part under the control of the person. It's contingent upon the right arrangement of the stuff.
This has been a catastrophe, leading to a spiritual, economic, and political decay. Most of the problems that we see in society today are due to this neoliberal system of economics and of politics. Everything from terrible media to corrupt politicians to industrial decay to deaths of despair to our slide towards authoritarianism, surveillance, and censorship to the divisive culture war nonsense that tears the working class apart.
She's actually kind of like the sales leaks of Stuff Mart in that way. Happiness for Krystal is not something a little too elusive for public policy or workplace structure to resolve.
Happiness waits at the Stuff Mart. All you need is lots more stuff.
And she is talking about happiness here. She's talking about the solution to deaths of despair and spiritual decay. How do we help people in despair is another way of asking, how do we help people become happier? Speaking about this topic, Thomas Aquinas says, happiness is the ultimate end of human acts. And I think Krystal might agree. But Aquinas continues, man is not perfectly happy so long as something remains for him to desire and to seek. And further, it is impossible for any created good to constitute man's happiness, for happiness is the perfect good which lulls the appetite altogether, else it would not be the last end, if something yet remained to be desired. As Madame Blueberry knows, there's always more stuff to be had. And I know what you're thinking. Transcendent mystical happiness doesn't put food on the table. You do need some stuff, and it's not a bad thing to want to live comfortably. And I agree with that. But notice the way Krystal frames the issue.
Unions are really the only way that we can fight back against the system that has hollowed out everything good in this nation.
Unions, or whatever leftist cause, aren't just a way for people to put food on the table. She's far more ambitious than that. They are the messianic solution to American troubles. You might say they're Krystal's Isle of the Happy Hearts. And the thing is, unions, or strong social safety nets, would hopefully make everybody a little more secure. But they won't make us happy. This isn't to dismiss the necessity of stuff. We all have needs and wants. And in the ideal world, we prosper. But I think St. Augustine has some wisdom on this subject. Bad times, hard times. That is what people keep saying. But let us live well, and times shall be good. We are the times. Such as we are, such are the times. In other words, prosperity is good, worth seeking, but we ultimately govern and control the times through our own character. We, in our quest for virtue, have greater impact on our happiness than our material conditions. This is why, even at her lowest material point, Madame Blueberry is the most at peace.
This once very Blueberry was truly thankful that day for everything she had.
According to Krystal's implication, this should be impossible. According to her, when the exact settings of balance are in place between labor and capital, every problem Krystal listed should sooner or later evaporate. But the same fair criticism leveled against the Stuff Mart salesmen of this world, that they view people as interchangeable materialistic units, not as complex beings with complex needs they are, is represented in an only cosmetically more compassionate way from Krystal. To look at somebody as defined by any material metric like their class, to see them as irreversibly and fundamentally molded by their economic interests alone, is as dehumanizing in its materialism as any reptilian neoliberalism. If the key to a happy heart isn't an aisle at Stuff Mart, it's ultimately not going to be on the picket line either.
Who wants to live in a declining nation of anxiety, violence, and polarization? Electoral politics, listen, they are one part of that struggle. But the truth is, without organized labor, democracy is hollow. Unions are a basic required building block of actual democracy because the union hall, it's one of the few places left where people of different political ideologies and cultural backgrounds actually have to engage with one another and democratically work through their differences.
I'm not sure how intentionally she picked these phenomena. My question would be, why stop there? Why not add divorce? Broken homes, infidelity, could those count too? It's unclear to me if there's a limiting principle here. I've certainly never heard her offer one, and I hate to get too personal, but Krystal is currently on her third marriage. To me, I think it's worth suggesting that capitalism didn't break up her marriages. I'm not here to judge her. I don't know her. But it seems like she ought to know from personal experience that there is more to a good life than just the right material circumstances, which she lives quite comfortably. Marriages, relationships, and communities sometimes fail because humans are flawed, not because of some system that wasn't tuned exactly right. Life is messy. Maybe it could be made better through the material collaboration of labor or social programs, but it's never going to somehow not be complicated and hard, even when people are prosperous like Krystal.
How can you have democracy when there are no real communities to organize and no citizen-led membership organizations to lead the fight?
Krystal isn't talking about any community other than her preferred unions. How about the pro-life Catholic Church? Or the movement of Muslims to take pornographic materials out of middle schools, or the evangelical push against gay marriage. I don't think she supports those community actions. Here's what her latest husband and co-host has to say on the subject.
I've always believed that with the rise of technology comes a decrease in, magical thinking or belief in the supernatural, because, science and technology has gotten us to a point where you basically have all the information that's available in the world at your fingertips at any given moment. When you can research anything like that, if you're just curious about it, it's kind of hard to hold on to any sort of magical beliefs, because you could just look into whatever you're curious about. Are people really naive enough and selfish enough to believe that they happen to be born in the one true correct religion? But I find it hard to believe in the modern age that almost anybody is really a theist, where they think, not only do I believe in a God, it is the God of a particular religion, and we know X, Y, and Z about that God. And we know that Jesus is the Son of God, and we know, that you're getting goofy when you get to that point, right? So that's one thing. Look, there are other more darker reasons why people might be turning away from religion. We have incredible income and wealth inequality. I mean, the oldest scam of all time is religion. And I guess people are catching on to it. And it's just it's time. We're outgrowing it. Society is outgrowing religion.
I don't think that's true.
How about Rotary clubs, neighborhoods, cities, states and regions, countries, families, ethnic communities, random leaks sitting at a park bench? There's more than one vessel through which positive changes manifest. I agree with Krystal that communities are important and also see that they are deteriorating. But if we don't put our finger on the root cause or causes, we will only worsen the situation through a false correction. Why should she imply that if there are no unions, then there are no real communities? She seems pretty prejudiced and narrow in her value judgment of what is real and what is not. Remember,
I am of the opinion that there is no war but class war.
in my view, this statement is a cynical disparagement of the social utility in traditional holistic sources of meaning like churches, families, townships, and clubs, paired with a weirdly twee sanguinity about the potential of a purely economic factor. And I think people may underestimate the sheer aggression of this view. If you zoom out culturally speaking, she's not just talking about Jesus. She's talking about Buddha or Muhammad or any source of meaning that potentially represents the opiate of the masses as she sees it. Dunking on American Christians is fashionable in her Washington left-lib media circles, but her ideology is by no means limited to them. Krystal is as much of a culture warrior as the rest of them in order to fight churches and families and other types of organizations she deems as being culture war nonsense. But when she does it, it's not culture wars, because her promotion of materialism in the culture is real. And it's real because it's material. And if you don't share her materialist perspective, then it's the culture war. Do you see the trick here? Materialism may be her ideological proclivity, but because it's material and also happens to be her proclivity, it's more valid than yours. For example, check out her thoughts on gas stoves.
Gas stoves. Apparently gas stoves are now the big culture war argument going on around the country. Gas stoves. If you have a gas stove in your house, it's not good. It's provably not good health-wise. this is what came out, right? And there were some like little feelers put out there, and some media outlets were basically saying like, oh, the government's maybe looking into getting rid of these, banning these. And it led to a giant, colossal backlash. It's gotten to the point where, so you have, who was it, Jim Jordan, who tweeted, "Gods, guns, gas stoves." Matt Gaetz tweeted like, "Take it from my cold dead hands," and it was a picture of the gas stove. And then now Ron DeSantis is selling merch with gas stove stuff on it, like don't tread on my gas stove, some shit like that.
That guy, there is not a culture war fight he won't jump immediately on top of.
Yeah.
See, it's culture wars for thee, but not for me. If you don't want the government fining you for the appliances that happen to be in your home, if you oppose that, culture war. But her and her current husband telling you it's for your own good and to quiet down about it isn't the culture war. What a hero of the working class.
Where did you get all these things?
Please, Your Majesty, we were given them. And if I may be so bold as to drink Your Majesty's very good health.
Silence!
And if you find meaning in the writings of Thomas Aquinas or the simple joy of a classic VeggieTale, must be some culture war elitist nonsense. No philosophy for the working class. No higher purpose. You pesky working class people always so concerned with your culture and religion and private property. Krystal lacks so much self-awareness that she brushes away dissent from the simple, direct beauty of Madame Blueberry to the timeless philosophy of Augustine and Aquinas about the dangers of materialism, proceeds to then complain about how bad materialism is, and then counters dogmatically with a different type of materialism. Furthermore, she appoints herself the ultimate judge and jury to decide what is and isn't valid for you to care about.
It makes a lot of sense that it would be college-educated voters who tend to be more economically secure themselves who then would prioritize cultural issues, right? It's like, I've got mine, I'm good, I don't really care about unions anymore, minimum wage, I'm way above that. Not to be, I don't want to be glib or like, but just in terms of people looking out for their interests. So now I have the bandwidth to care about these other social cultural issues.
If it so happens to be something other than her leftist orthodoxy, then you're anathema, a grifter, propagandized, or stupid. I don't think Krystal would like Madame Blueberry very much.
Madame Blueberry was confused. The little girl had so little, and yet she was happy. Madame needed to think about this for a while.
Ah, madam, your kingdom awaits.
You're not happy. Pay no attention to religion. That's just the opiate, you sheep. Something culture war. Something neoliberalism.
something dark side.
And it's so funny that Krystal, the multi-millionaire, would presume to patronize those who disagree, like me, who makes a median salary for somebody in their mid-20s, that I shouldn't find meaning in some non-material way, would presume to tell me the right and wrong ways in which I, or any other working person, should find meaning and purpose in their life. I think of it as a kind of modern let them eat cake, the dispassionate doctrine of luxury beliefs that me, living in the deep south with a working class salary, is out of touch, or doesn't care about the needs of working people, while she, the millionaire Washingtonite media personality, is the voice of the people. The woman who talks about living in Kentucky for a couple months with the same tone as a Peace Corps volunteer to Zimbabwe. Why can't working people have happy hearts like Madame Blueberry? Why can't they be thankful? I'm no J.D. Vance, okay? I'm not channeling the zeitgeist of deep Appalachia or anything. I have no tearjerker queued up about how I was born on the picket lines or how my single mom had to work 3 jobs. Those stories are very real, but I'm just another guy trying to make it, do the right thing, and have a happy heart at the end of the day. I'm convinced that's how we all feel, working class or not, and I doubt you will find that any more on a picket line than in a stuff mart.